Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Senators and all in attendance will please stand and be led in prayer by the Honorable Bryce E. Reeves, 17th Senatorial District. Following the prayer, all will please remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by Mr. Michael Adams, Director of Human Resources, Senate Clerk's Office.
Good morning. Before we go to prayer, let me do a quick reading from our Bible, and we're going to be in Psalms. Psalms 86:15 says, "But you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness." Let us go. Lord, I just thank you for this day that you've brought before us. Your word tells us that you are the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. Lord, I humbly ask for the grace to find the space between my impulse and my action, as your word just told us in the Psalms. Lord, to let the flow of a cooling breeze when I would respond with heat. Lord, to interrupt the fierceness sometimes that I have with gentleness, and to accept the moment that allows judgment to become discernment. To defer to silence when my tongue would rush to attack or defend. Father, we take on a lot of issues here, Lord, but let us all remember that we are one body of one accord. Father, your word also tells us that a strand of three cords seldom breaks. Father, I thank you for what you've done in my life, my family's life, and I ask you to put a hedge of protection around all those that gather here today and their families as we are away. Father, give those who live the farthest away traveling mercies as they go home today. I thank you for what you do and what you continue to do for us each and every day. In your Son's most precious and holy name I pray. Amen.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Mr. President, as predictable, I will respectfully move that we suspend the rules of the Senate consistent with the motion we adopted on the first day of the session allowing remote and electronic participation by senators.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the rules of the Senate be suspended? All in favor of suspending the rules will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 38, noes 0. The rules are suspended. The clerk will call the roll. All those in attendance will please record their vote aye.
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Friday, January 22nd, 2021.
Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 2, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 36, noes 2, Rule 36-1. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 4. Oops, Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Ayes 35, noes 4. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate in the morning hour? Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Today we are joined virtually by the ladies of the Virginia chapters of the Mid-Atlantic region of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, in conjunction with the gentlemen of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, as they gather for a joint legislative day at the Capitol. This virtual gathering is convened by Ms. Jennifer King Congleton, Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for Alpha Kappa Alpha, along with Mr. Fred Scott, District Director for Alpha Phi Alpha. More than 700 participants have joined today to learn more about the legislative processes, introduce their collective legislative agenda, and hear from executive branch agencies regarding how the laws that we pass are implemented. The group's 2021 legislative agenda includes a focus on education, economic justice, voting rights, health care, public safety, juvenile and criminal justice reform, and housing. During this unprecedented time, the collective legislative agenda of Alpha Kappa Alpha and Alpha Phi Alpha take on new meaning as both organizations are committed to service and the uplift of humanity. It may be of interest to note that our newly inaugurated Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Mr. President, please extend a warm virtual welcome to the Senate to members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated as they join us here today.
Thank the Senator. If we all could extend a warm welcome to the distinguished leaders of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is also the legislative day for the members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, whose members include Madam President, the senator from Portsmouth, and myself. Delta Sigma Theta was founded on January the 13th, 1913 at Howard University by 22 women focused on social action and social justice. As a matter of fact, their first public act as a sorority was to march in the suffrage march on Washington, where unfortunately they were told to march in the back. But they have continued to march and continue to fight for expanding access to voting, expanding access to education and health care. And some of our notable members include Dorothy Height, a very prominent Virginian who was part of the civil rights movement, Alexis Herman, former Secretary of Labor, both are Virginians, Shirley Jackson, Barbara Jordan. And I ask that you give the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, who are watching virtually, a warm Senate welcome.
Thank the Senator. We can all extend warm greetings to the distinguished leaders of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Monday, January 25th, 2021. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate bills on third reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 1 through 3, that's Senate Bill 1111 through Senate Bill 1280, be placed on their final passage in a block. Any senator desiring to move a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 3, Senate Bill 1111 through Senate Bill 1280, be placed upon their final passage in the block with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1111, Senate Bill 1112, Senate Bill 1158, Senate Bill 1161, Senate Bill 1280.
Question is, shall the bills in the block pass? All in favor of passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 1122, a bill relating to habitual offenders repeal. We have a floor amendment.
Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. With regard to Senate Bill 1122, I now move that we reconsider the vote by which the bill was ordered to be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the bill was ordered engrossed in advance to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I now move that we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I now move that we agree to the floor amendment and speaking to that motion, sir.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of this body, the underlying bill, the major thrust of this bill is, of course, to finally pull a full repeal of the habitual offender driver statute. In doing so, when we went through code sections, inadvertently there was a code section that pulled out the right of the DMV using VASAP to have and administer intervention interviews. So what this amendment does is just puts it back in the bill that allows then VASAP to still conduct those intervention interviews, which occur usually when you've gotten a second driving on suspended or something similar. So for those reasons, again, Mr. President, I now move that we agree to the floor amendment.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendment? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that we engross in advance Senate Bill 1122 to its third constitutional reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third constitutional reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third constitutional reading. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
I'm starting to enjoy this back and forth with you, Mr. President.
Same here.
I now move that we suspend the rules and dispense with the third constitutional reading for Senate Bill 1122.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The rules are suspended and the third constitutional reading is dispensed with. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Last time I promised, Mr. President, I now move that Senate Bill 1122 pass. And speaking to that motion, sir.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. we in 1999 repealed the habitual offender driver statute, but we didn't make that appeal retroactive to those persons who had been declared habitual offenders. And that number right now, for those that have been declared since before 1999, no one's been declared a habitual offender since, numbers in 32,000 of our citizens. The reason why we repealed habitual offenders, because what this body and the body across the hall did was they made specific mandatory minimums for certain sentences, which removed the need to have people adjudicated for habitual offender. Remember, habitual offender, you became one if you had 3 infractions, like a DUI, 2 driving on suspendeds, 3 driving on suspendeds. And once you're created to be a habitual offender, then it enhanced the penalties that you otherwise face. We've now have tailored other options for punishment for those driving offenses. Class 1 misdemeanor for driving on suspended now punishable by a year in jail. We have some of the harshest penalties in the nation for driving under the influence now that takes care of that. So what we're finding is a lot of these habitual offenders became habitual offenders or can't get their licenses back because of the fines and court costs, which we dispensed with through SB 1 last year. So what I'm seeking is that rather than a half repeal, let's fully repeal this. For somebody who gets a DUI, a driving on suspended third, that's a 10-day mandatory minimum. Now, I had a case where a gentleman was pulled over the side of the road, his car broke down, his car was broken down, and then they came to help, and it turned out he was a habitual offender, gave him a ticket. He was going to get his job. He had no other choice. He had to drive to go to work. And that, in and of itself, meant a 1-year mandatory minimum, and it was a driving on suspended third, which would have been a 10-day deal for somebody who is not adjudicated a habitual offender. That is patently unfair. That is applying the law one way to one person that you have labeled and to another that commits the same offense for no other reason than because they may have been doing that conduct, but it's after 1999 and nobody's called a habitual offender anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about time that we do this. It's the right thing to do. And for those reasons, Mr. President, I renew my motion that Senate Bill 1122 pass. Thank you, sir.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to see if the patron will yield for a question.
Senator yield.
Yes, I will yield. Thank you.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Stanley, several times during your comments about this bill, you referenced the fact that we now have mandatory minimums for a lot of driving offenses, specifically DUI, and specifically DUI second and third offenses, and specifically DUIs where the defendant has a .15 or greater BAC. Now, we just heard a bill in Judiciary this morning that will do away with all of those mandatory minimum sentences. If that bill passes, it does away with all the mandatory minimum sentences. Do we now need to bring back the habitual offender law?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I thank the gentleman for his question. I'd answer him. Number one, I'd proxied out, and obviously I didn't give my proxy to you, but I gave it to somebody else, and I believe I voted against it. But what I will say is this, no. The habitual offender statute was awful to begin with. That's why people in this very body, one of who is carrying his parfait as he walks back to his desk, repealed it. We weren't going to do this anymore. The problem, we've left 32,000 Virginians on an island, branded them in a manner which allows them never to regain their status as a good citizen in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Simply that. We should judge a person based on their actions, not put a title on them and then enhance a penalty because we put an arbitrary title on them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to you.
Morning.
Mr. President, speaking to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
I want to put an exclamation point on something that the gentleman from Franklin County said a moment ago, and that is this. Last year, we passed a law that said that individuals could no longer have their licenses suspended just because they couldn't pay fines and costs. And we went through a whole debate, and we all know that people that don't have the money to pay fines and costs drive anyway, and many of them get caught and are charged with driving on a suspended license. The senator is correct. This was a bad law. There are thousands of people who were branded an habitual offender because of 3 convictions for driving on a suspended license. They didn't have their fines, money to pay fines and costs, and they were branded an habitual offender. Of course, we've now gotten rid of that. It's those people that are out there that still have that scarlet letter that I think this bill addresses. I hope the body supports it.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1122? Seeing none, Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly appreciate the senator from the city of Richmond's remarks. And I'm reminded of a person who actually carried the bill in 1999, the repeal, Secretary of Public Safety. So I wanted to credit him and also the senator from James City County. And he reminded me just now that this body and the House had made a compromise to turn the DUI third into a felony and to get rid of the habitual offender. Because DUIs are the dangerous and sometimes deadly behavior, not the driving while your license is suspended, that they were concerned about. And so even when we talk about perhaps the potential of withdrawing mandatory minimums, we still have significant punishments for bad behavior that requires us not only to not need the habitual offender statute anymore, but we shouldn't leave these 32,000 Virginians with that as describing who they are. Let's get them back on the road. Let's get them back in society. Let's get them working safely in our communities and being good citizens. And I thank you, Mr. President. I now renew my motion that Senate Bill 1122 pass.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 1122 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13.
Ayes 26, noes 13. Senate Bill 1122 passes.
Senate Bill 1182, a bill relating to motor vehicle liability insurance coverage limits.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Serville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. Speaking to that motion.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1182 has to do with motor vehicle liability insurance limits. What the bill does, you might remember this bill from last session. It's a little bit different, but it raises the minimum policy for bodily injury or uninsured or uninsured motorists from $25,000 to $50,000. It raises the minimum policy when multiple people are hurt from 50 to 100, and property damage from 20 to 40, so that everybody driving will have to be required to have a policy with those minimums. It also excludes the new minimums from taxi cab insurance, which was a barrier to the bill surviving on the other body last year. Last session, this bill, with a little bit lower limits, passed this body 31 to 8. So just for a little bit of history, the limits that are contained currently in the code are really old. Somebody's supposed to say, how old are they? 1975. They were so old, they were put on the books before Dick Saslaw was a state senator. They were so old, Senator Norman had just got out of law school when they were passed. But they're so old that, Mr. President, the average car in 1975 was worth $4,400. The median household income in America was $11,800. If you were to look at just the time value of money, basic inflation, that $25,000 ought to be about $120,000 today. That's where the limit ought to be if you're talking about $1975. If you look at medical inflation, because you remember these auto insurance, they're typically there to cover you, for your medical bills when you hurt somebody, when somebody's hurt or injured when a car's being driven. Using medical inflation, today the limit should be around $262,000. In fact, in Europe, their minimum policy is $1 million. So, Mr. President, I know there's some concern that by doing this, we might cause some other people not to get coverage. The state of Maine has a $50,000 limit, which is in this bill. They have the absolute lowest number of uninsured drivers on the highways in America, according to the study the DMV did a couple of years ago. Florida has a $10,000 threshold, which is much lower than what we're about to vote on, and they have the highest number of uninsured drivers. So in other words, if you increase insurance, more people seem to get insurance. If you're worried about the cost, according to the DMV study, this will cost the average Virginian who has one of these minimum policies about $63 a year, or about $5 a month. I'm sure the senator from Spotsylvania can quote you a policy if you need to find one. He's located right on Garrisonville Road, right on in the 36th Senate District. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. President, is one other aspect of this is that by having limits that are so low, whenever somebody is injured and their health insurance, their medical bills are paid by Medicaid, the state goes back against the insurance policy to recover their Medicaid money. And I checked with DMAS, and they told me that they lost about $1 million last year that this bill would help taxpayers collect. So this bill will actually help taxpayers recoup about $1 million a year in medical bills that would otherwise be paid. So this bill is good for fiscal conservatives. So having said that, Mr. President, I hope we could pass this bill like we did last session, 31-8, and move it on to the other body.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1182? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1182 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes no.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 11, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 27, noes 11, Rule 36-1. Senate Bill 1182 passes.
Senate Bill 1097, a bill related to absentee voting, witness signature not required.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very simple bill. What it does is it removes the witness signature from an absentee ballot. And I would suggest to you and submit to you that this restores the dignity and privacy of those who choose to vote by mail. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that a witness signature in any way would prevent fraud. There's no evidence to suggest that. And in fact, Oregon has had a mail-in voting, completely mail-in voting program since 1998. And the Heritage Foundation, a foundation which many in this body refer to for reference and for data, the Heritage Foundation looked at over 15 million votes in the state of Oregon over a period of several elections and found only 14 alleged allegations of voter fraud in this entire vote-by-mail program. I think this time has come, Mr. President, that we remove this barrier to voting. A lot of groups have looked at this bill. It is a good bill. We need to reinforce our democratic principles. We need to encourage people to vote, and I ask that the body pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I would hope that members would vote no on this bill, and I appreciate what the gentlelady has pointed out, and her reference to the Heritage Foundation study with respect to 14 allegations of fraud in Oregon is interesting, but I would ask rhetorically, not directly, but I would ask, what evidence is there that a single vote has actually been discouraged or repressed, or that this has served as a barrier to anyone in Virginia or anywhere else that has a signature requirement to vote. You know, the events of this year notwithstanding, let me just remind you that for years I have stood on this floor as we have debated voting procedures, and I have said, look, the issue is not so much whether there are documented cases of voter fraud that are enabled, but the real issue is the confidence of the American people in the integrity of our system of elections. And I've been saying that long before the last president in the White House ever said it. So don't accuse me of parroting what he said. But you cannot ignore facts. There are a lot of people, and I'm not saying that I believe that there was widespread voter fraud that should cause us to invalidate Virginia's votes or anything like that. But what I'm telling you is that people have a lack of confidence in the integrity of our system of elections. And every time we remove a safeguard that people perceive as a safeguard of fairness, it further undermines voter confidence. I think it's important for us to do more to shore up voter confidence. And I'm not making this argument on the basis of evidence of fraud. I'm doing it in the sense of bringing America together and Virginia together. We need to slow down. We need to be evidence-based, not only in asking whether to remove safeguards, but in whether or not these safeguards are actually an impediment to a single person. You know, when we talked about the photo ID legislation, there was a lawsuit in Virginia that was brought challenging the photo ID legislation on the basis of suppressing the vote. Yet during the nearly 1 year that that case was in discovery, there was not one single person who was brought forward as evidence of any kind of repression or suppression of the vote. Not one person stepped forward and said, I did not or could not vote because I did not have an identification card. This is going to further undermine the confidence of Virginians in the integrity of our elections, and I would hope that we would link arms and vote no.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1097? Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola. Sorry. Do you want to go last, Senator? Senator from Prince William, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking briefly to the bill.
Senators, the floor.
I hadn't planned on speaking of it, and I do respect the senator from Rockingham's comments, because I think he is genuinely, of course, concerned about the framework. But I think there's something else that's really important to this discussion, is, over the last several years, hearing from constituents that later on received the notice that their ballot didn't count because of the signature issue and the disenfranchising of a vote. And one of those calls was from an 85-year-old veteran who had served his country, done everything right, thought they had filled out the forms, and then to see his vote disenfranchised. That's the practical application of what occurs. Think about it. This is a real barrier. So while I appreciate the thoughts about concern over the potential, our concern should be in the hearts of ensuring that we don't disenfranchise people, that their vote does count, and not over a simple clerical mistake, Mr. President. And I urge the body to support the bill.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will just conclude by saying that Virginia is one of only 8 states that still requires a witness signature. And I do remind the body that voter protection language or fraud prevention language is still in the statute. An individual who gets this ballot still has to swear that he or she is who they say they are and that they live where they say they live. So there, again, this is a barrier, and I think it has been, as was pointed out from the senator from Prince William, it has caused ballots to not be counted. I ask that the body pass this measure. It is time.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 1097 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes no.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. Senate Bill 1097 passes.
Senate Bill 1194, a bill relating to produce safety sunset.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass. And speaking of the bill,
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, this piece of legislation is extending the sunset on legislation that allows the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to conduct certain produce inspections. The alternative is to turn this over to the federal government. We don't want to do that. We're very happy with Virginia conducting these inspections. It's worked very well and will continue to work well. So I would ask that this measure pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1194? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1194 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2.
Ayes 37, noes 2. Senate Bill 1194 passes.
Senate Bill 1239, a bill relating to absentee voting, third-party absentee ballot assembly and distribution.
Senator from Loudoun County, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage of the bill and speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Senate Bill 1239 authorizes the local election office to contract with a third-party vendor for preparation, assembly, and mailing of absentee ballots. This has become a large task for many localities. In all cases, currently, these officers are already working with third-party vendors to print ballots for the election. This would just allow them the option, and I repeat that option, to go to a third party. Third-party vendors have specialized equipment and are better able to produce, mail, and can do it faster and with more accuracy and tracking ability. Another part of this bill is very important. It would also require regulations. The Department of Elections produce regulations to include processes to ensure secure, timely delivery of voter information to contractors and reports of mailed absentee ballots. With that, I move passage of the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1239? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1239 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 12.
Ayes 27, noes 12. Senate Bill 1239 passes.
Senate Bill 1274, a bill relating to government planning wildlife corridors.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that measure.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In 2020, we passed a bill on wildlife corridors to require the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and VDOT to come up with a state plan for wildlife corridors to allow for the free movement of animals and to keep them off of the highways, where there were 61,000 collisions in Virginia in 2016. with over $500 million in property damage. And these are 61,000 animals who have foregone the pleasure of perhaps being adopted by Senator Stanley. And the issue here is that today is that we want other state agencies to include in their strategic plans. Once we come out with the statewide wildlife corridor plan, it just requires other significant state agencies to get involved in including it in their plans to further the effort to prevent that property damage and loss of life. Thank you, Mr. President. I reiterate my motion for the bill to pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1274? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1274 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 10.
Ayes 29, noes 10. Senate Bill 1274 passes.
Senate Bill 1281, a bill relating to elections, qualifications of the General Registrar residency.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 1281 pass and would like to speak to that motion.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this bill would allow for general registrars who are registrars in either counties or cities with populations of 50,000 residents or less to be able to live outside their city or county. Currently in Virginia, general registrars are required to be a qualified voter in the county or city where they reside unless they live in a jurisdiction of 25,000 or less. So this just increases that number. I would renew my motion, Mr. President, that SB 1281 pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1281? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1281 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 31, noes 8.
Ayes 31, noes 8. Senate Bill 1281 passes.
Senate Bill 1290, a bill relating to Conserve Virginia program established.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 1290 pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator, is the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is Conserve Virginia is a website that's been set up over the last few years to speak to conservation opportunities and actually 21 different data points. This just codifies the work that's been done. And if you're unfamiliar with this site, you should go to it and put your district in, because it'll show you the agricultural, farming, cultural and historic preservation, scenic opportunities, tidal lands, flooding issues. So it really is very comprehensive using 21 different data points. What this is attempting to do is include it on a go forward when we set up land for conservation easements. So we want to conserve land, but we also want to serve the right type of land. So there's a percentage of money that goes towards each group, so this doesn't change that. I will also ask you to look at paragraph F. Initially, the Farm Bureau and the Agribusiness Council were concerned about this bill because they haven't been that comfortable with some of the data points used by agriculture. So that language was worked out with the Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry and Natural Resources in those groups to make sure that they're comfortable on a go forward, that we'll be updating the model and properly using information that is good for the conservation of agricultural lands. And then finally, on between lines 75 and 84, you see already an existing 8 data points that we use when looking towards land conservation. This just adds a 9th and includes Conserve Virginia. As a part of that, it is not, that list is not meant if you don't have to meet them all, but it just adds Conserve Virginia to the list of trying to utilize this model to conserve land on a go forward. So with that, Mr. President, I ask the bill to pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1290? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1290 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. Senate Bill 1290 passes.
Senate Bill 1291, a bill relating to Virginia Water Protection Permit, efficient water use.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move Senate Bill 1291 pass and speaking the motion.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is another one of those eye-popping DEQ bills. This is an effort to, when dealing with surface water permits, we have a number of systems out there, including my own city, Williamsburg, that have older structures and older systems, and we have a significant amount of water loss. So whether it's leakage or whether it's issues along the way, so they draw 100 and only 85 gallons make it to the final destination. So this is an effort not to restrict people from getting these permits, but just as we set the permits up, asking them to put together a water auditing plan and a leak detection and repair plan. Several cities, this is surface water, several cities within the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area, the top 10 average losing about 15% of their water. So it is unaccounted for. They get the water and it's unaccounted, doesn't make its final destination. But there are smaller towns west of Interstate 95, one particular one that draws 153,000 gallons and loses 86,000 of those gallons. So these are old structures. This is an attempt to put plans in place on a go forward so that DEQ can work with them to try to determine what needs to be done and ask them to do a plan as far as laying out how they're going to fix it. Now, the bill initially eliminated the Administrative Process Act. We have taken that part of it out. So the State Water Control Board will adopt regulations to implement this provision. We laid out in the initial bill some suggestions, but that'll all be done in a public hearing and a public process. And this is just to help folks fix the issues that they have and make sure that they're aware of them and working with us to deal with them on a go forward. So with that, Mr. President, I ask the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1291? For what purpose is Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. Again, we find a regulation here where municipalities and other entities, golf courses, absolutely anybody who's an industrial user is going to have a water audit, a water detection plan, and a repair plan to fix all that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'm not suggesting it is, although it will be a terrible burden to small municipalities that have older systems. I grew up in the little town of Montrose, and it's a very small town, but they've got really old water pipes, and they bust all winter long, and they fix them. It's going to be an extraordinary expense because the fact of the matter is you don't have a water audit and detection plan without, and it also requires a repair plan. At some point, you're going to have to spend the money to fix this, and we all know that. And again, I stand this year as I have in years past because I don't understand why this General Assembly is putting this burden on small municipalities, on smaller industrial users, when there are two sources that are draining the Potomac Aquifer in the groundwater management area. It's two paper mills. Between the two of them, they drain more than half of all the water out of that aquifer. And this is what I said to you all 3 years ago when we started seeing these bills. These bills will come and it'll pick around the periphery and will make it harder for homeowners, for gardeners, for small municipalities, for other folks. And these big industrial users, the two paper mills, will continue to drain the Potomac Aquifer. And that's what's happened. And I commend the senator from Williamsburg for his efforts, although by the same token, what's happening is we're not addressing the real problem. And if we don't address the real problem, we're going to have a real problem. You know, this is a real feel-good thing. It doesn't amount to much in the grand scheme of things because these are very, very small water losses. But everybody can say they've done something to try to fix this. It's going to be an extraordinary cost. While at the same time, the aquifer will be depleted. We already have saltwater infiltration in Virginia Beach. It's moving into the Williamsburg area. It'll be on up in the Northern Neck very shortly. So I'm going to vote no, not because of the senator's efforts, but because if we continue to do this, we'll never address the real problem, and we've got to address the real problem of those two operations that are draining that aquifer.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Just speak briefly to the bill, sir.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. Senator Stewart's comments are spot on. I remind the gentleman, the patron of the bill, that he has 3 very large golf facilities, either in his district or tangential to his district. That would be Kings Mill, Ford's Colony, and Williamsburg Golf Club. Now, I know a lot of the people that own and run these places, and these golf courses are some of the best managed water conservators in the Commonwealth. So I would just warn you, if you play golf and you vote for this bill, you're never going to get a good tee time.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Bedford, Senator Newman, rise?
Mr. President, to ask the patron a question.
Will Senator yield for a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, I yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the gentleman, would you mind terribly if this bill goes by for the day? And here's my concern. It may be fine. The city of Lynchburg has the oldest gravity-driven system in the country, and it's coming through Amherst. And I can't read fast enough to know whether your surface water is going to cover them or not. But we do have one of the highest utility bills in the country because of the CSO problem, and I just can't add one more. And maybe the senator can answer the question or allow it to go by for the day.
Mr. President, I would say to the gentleman from Bedford that they are not on the list of the top 10, but that doesn't mean that it isn't of consequence. I would also say that, remember, this is not your gardeners and your waters, and much as I appreciate the gentleman's addressing golf courses, because that was a bill last year that they didn't like. This would only deal with less. You have to have a permit only if you do not have to have a permit if you draw less than 10,000 gallons a day in a non-tidal area or less than 2 million gallons a day in a tidal area. So we're not talking about small guys, but Mr. President, since the senator from Bedford questions Lynchburg scenario, if he'd like it to go by for the day, we can evaluate that. I'd be happy to accommodate that.
Mr. President, thank you, sir. We can go by for the day.
Thank the senator. Without objection, Senate Bill 1291 will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar, it's pages 7 through 12, Senate Bill 1154 through 1427, be advanced their engrossment and third reading in a block after the engrossment third reading in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto. Anyone desiring to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 7 through 12, Senate Bill 1154 through Senate Bill 1427, be engrossed and advanced through their third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, and that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1154, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1169, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1187, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1189, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendment.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the committee amendment. I move that it be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1205, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1213, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary. Senate Bill 1242, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary. Senate Bill 1271, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. Senate Bill 1296, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. Senate Bill 1320, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendment.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the amendment be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1324, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendments.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that it be engrossed and passed on to its third constitutional reading.
Senator, these are in a block, so we'll do that all at the end. Thank you.
Senate Bill 1338, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, this bill was supposed to have been referred to the Finance and Appropriations Committee, so I move that it be re-referred to the Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be re-referred to the Committee on Finance? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is re-referred to the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 1369, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. Senate Bill 1399, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 1421, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1427, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed in advance to their third reading? That is all bills except for Senate Bill 1338. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed in advance to their third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 1355, a bill to allow the withdrawal of a member of the Rapidan Service Authority. The committee substitute has been adopted by the Senate.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Mr. President, I ask that that bill go by for the day.
Thank the Senator. Without objection, Senate Bill 1355 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1199, a bill related to conservation easements construction, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendments, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would waive reading of the floor substitute.
Senator, we first have the committee amendment, which we need to move. And just for a point of order, if the committee amendment is adopted, then the floor sub would be out of order. But if the committee amendment is rejected, then we could take up the floor sub. So the first thing we need to do is to have a motion regarding the committee amendments. So if you want to get to the floor sub, we'd have to reject the committee amendments.
Well, I would have to give way to the gentleman from Fairfax City, but I would like an opportunity to speak on that.
Thank the Senator. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. It looks like I was all prepared to play defense and now I get to play offense. I would move the committee amendment and speak to that motion.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I am going to explain the committee amendment, and then I'm going to explain what my colleague is about to do and why I oppose it. First of all, the committee amendment is very brief. It simply strikes the word liberally before construed, so it just becomes the easement will be construed for the purposes for which it was adopted. And now let me give you a little bit of background. This is the bill on land conservation easements. Land conservation easements were established about 20 years ago by this body, by the General Assembly, and have been the #1 program that we have used to preserve open space in Virginia. We have invested at least $2 billion in taxpayer money in keeping open space. Oftentimes, these have been grants that have been given to people that own land, farmers, people that owned forest land they wanted to keep undeveloped, and it's been a very successful program. Now, I'm going to anticipate my colleague's opposition and his motion, and let me explain to you why you should oppose it. My colleague, and let me begin, this will be the second time I've said it, so you'll see I'm equal opportunity in calling colleagues my brothers and then opposing them. Last week I opposed my brother from Chesapeake, and this week I'm going to oppose my brother from Stafford. And in each case, I have a tremendous respect. I have tremendous respect for this gentleman's acumen, and we have worked on cases together as attorneys, and I agree with him on so many things. I don't agree with him on this. The land conservation easement program is the opposite of condemnation. It is the opposite of condemnation. Rather than the government approaching a landowner and saying, I'm going to take your land, in which case, call me, I'll represent you. Free initial consultation. Instead, the landowner is approaching the government and saying, please put an easement on my land and give me a tax credit. And in other words, they will approach somebody, typically a third party, Virginia Outdoors Foundation or some other conservation foundation, and say, please put an easement on my land, keep my land undeveloped. Then they receive a tax credit from the fair market value, walked backwards to the value of the land once the easement is placed upon it, and they are able to avoid paying state taxes. Now, we finally put a cap on that amount in the budget a few years ago, but until that time, we had shelled out literally billions of dollars in tax credits. Now, here's the thing. An easement is considered what's called a restrictive covenant, which means it's construed against the drafter, which means if there's any ambiguity or loophole, then the person that is burdened by that easement, in other words, the landowner or his successor, can go forward and they can actually develop the land or find a way to do a mixed-use development or put on some other commercial use when that was never the intent. The intent was always that the land would be held in its undisturbed status. Now, my colleague will take my bill and make it prospective, so it will only apply from July 1, 2021 going forward. That would effectively nullify the entire point of the bill. The entire point of the bill is to protect the investment we've made in our open space. So again, with apologies to my dear friend, and I will reserve a little bit of time once I hear his argument, I would ask that you accept, green, the committee amendment and defeat what will be the floor amendment. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purposes, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the measure, Mr. President.
Senator, is the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, Mr. President, I do agree largely with what the gentleman from Fairfax City is saying, although I must tell you it's very difficult for me to listen to those comments coming from someone that I used to consider as a property rights advocate, and that advocacy is slowly eroding. See if I can put this in a nutshell. The gentleman is exactly right. When you draft a conservation easement, it's construed against the draftor. Typically, we're talking about the Attorney General's office, actually in almost every case. And so if there's an ambiguity, they resolve that in favor of the landowner. And I think that's the right thing, because what you're talking about are folks, you know, that you hear these stories about wealthy developers putting property in a conservation easement to get all these tax credits and everything, but by and large, the vast majority are people who have a piece of land and they're struggling to hold on to it. And they don't know how to hold on to it financially. And so they hear about this program where they can get tax credits for it, and they inquire about it, and they place an easement on their land in exchange for the tax credits, and then they sell the tax credits through a broker to get some money to help keep the family farm alive or help keep a piece of property that they otherwise would have to sell. But what you have to keep in mind is that these people are giving up nearly every right they have in this property. The only thing they have left are very few rights that they can take advantage of to live on it, maybe to farm it, maybe to hunt on it. I've seen easements that say you cannot hunt, you cannot ride a horse, you cannot ride a four-wheeler, you can't put your boat in to go water skiing. They can be incredibly restrictive. And while I have great respect for my friend from Fairfax City, the problem is this. If you adopt this amendment and this bill the way it is going forward, if you have not set out everything that you can possibly think of that you want to do on your property, you're not going to be able to do it. Gosh, I want to have a wedding for my daughter on my farm. Well, I didn't put it on there. And you're not allowed to have 100 people or 200 people come because that's an event that's not allowed under the easement. Under the gentleman from Fairfax's amendment, this is where we'll find ourselves. You're going to severely injure this program. It has been a very good program. I have worked in these easements. I own a very large farm with an easement on it. And it's complicated easement, and I've worked through it. I haven't had any problems, but I'm a lawyer and a state senator. Most of these folks who have these easements are unsophisticated. They don't have a whole lot of help, and they're giving away all of the value in their land in order to try to save it. All I'm asking is this. If you're going to take this approach, an easement is a contract, just like any other bargain we make. And if you're going to do that, then make it prospective and tell people what you're doing. So make it apply to easements after July 21st, 2021, this year, and tell people the new standard under the law. What's wrong with that? You know, we're going to change the game in Virginia on you, but we're not going to do it until this year. Just be upfront and honest with people so they know what they're getting into. If this passes the way it is, I suspect you're going to see a lot of people go in and argue before the court that their contract has been changed, that is unconstitutional, and they want to break their easement. And I think a lot of them will have a good argument, quite frankly. We never adopt retroactive laws in this body. And why should we start now? This is just a simple matter of fairness. This all comes from a really bad case out of the senator from Bass District. And we all agree it was a bad case. But every time we have a bad case in court in Virginia, we can't jump up and change 200 or 300 years of law to adopt to one bad case. That's how you end up with worse law. So I hope that you all will reject the committee amendment so I can get to the floor substitute.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake, rise?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Thank you. And in fact, I am going to ask the gentleman. I'll make a comment. We heard from the health commissioners today in caucus. I have some questions about this bill. I've heard the Senator Stewart mention it a few times. I heard in committee. I am thoroughly confused about the bill or what the substitute that we're looking at today will do. I am going to ask that this bill go by for the day, and I've had some inquiries from people and constituents about this. I want a thorough explanation from the senator from the city of Fairfax and Senator Stewart before we vote, and so I would ask that the bill go by for the day.
Mr. President,
Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
I'll talk about this even more tomorrow, but I don't have an objection if it goes by, but I'm not quite sure what else needs to be said, but I don't have an objection.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1199 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1121, a bill relating to birth certificates amendments, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 1121 be engrossed and moved to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, should the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1220, a bill relating to state hospitals' admission of certain aliens, reported from the Committee on Education and Health.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1256, a bill relating to membership on Criminal Justice Services Board and Committee on Training, Law Enforcement Training, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1322, a bill relating to public schools, seizure management, and action plan, biennial training, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. President, I move we engross in advance to the third constitutional reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third constitutional reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third constitutional reading.
Senate Bill 1343, a bill relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, record exclusion for proprietary records and trade secrets, carbon sequestration agreements, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed,
Aye.
no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all Senate bills on first reading on the uncontested and regular calendar, pages 14 through 19, Senate Bills 1098 through Senate Bill 1366, the rules be suspended and the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 14 through 19, Senate Bill 1098 through Senate Bill 1366, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I now move that those bills go by for the day, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate joint resolutions on third reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move the Senate joint resolutions on third reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 19 through 21. That's SJR 298 through SJR 303. Be placed on their final passage in a block. Any senator desiring to move a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the Senate joint resolutions on the uncontested calendar third reading, pages 19 through 21, Senate joint resolution 298 through Senate joint resolution 303, be placed upon their final passage in the block with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The resolutions are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 298. Senate Joint Resolution 299.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Could Senate Joint Resolution 299 come out of the block?
Without objection, Senate Joint Resolution 299 is removed from the block.
Senate Joint Resolution 300.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could Senate Joint Resolution 300 come out of the block?
Thank the senator. Without objection, Senate Joint Resolution 300 is removed from the block.
Senate Joint Resolution 301.
Mr. President.
Junior Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Can Senate Joint Resolution 301 come out of the block?
Thank the senator. Without objection, Senate Joint Resolution 301 is removed from the block.
Senate Joint Resolution 302. Senate Joint Resolution 303.
The question is, shall the resolutions be agreed to in a block? That is, all resolutions except for Senate Joint Resolutions 299, 300, and 301. All in favor of the passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The resolutions in the block are agreed to.
Returning to Senate Joint Resolution 299.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Ebbett.
Yeah, I move Senate Joint Resolution 299 now pass.
Thank the senator. Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, with respect to this resolution, I'm abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 to the name on lines 21 and 22, but voting on Senate Joint Resolution 299 as a whole.
Thank the senator. The journal will so note. Are there any other abstentions? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 299 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. Senate Joint Resolution 299 is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 300.
Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
I move adoption of the resolution.
Thank the senator. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 on lines 259 through 260, but voting on SJR 300 as a whole.
Thank the senator. The journal will so note. Are there any other abstentions? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 300 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. Senate Joint Resolution 300 is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 301.
Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the resolution.
Thank the senator. The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Mr. President, I'm abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 on lines 171 through 172, but voting on SJR 301 as a whole.
Thank the senator. The journal will so note. Are there any other abstentions? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 301 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. Senate Joint Resolution 301 is agreed to.
Uncontested calendar, Senate Joint Resolutions on first reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all Senate joint resolutions on the first reading, the uncontested and regular calendars, that's pages 21 through 22, that's SJR 276 through SJR 285, that the rules be suspended and the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of the Senate joint resolutions on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 21 through 22, Senate Joint Resolution 276 through Senate Joint Resolution 285, be waived? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Senator Vogel, how do you vote?
Senator Vogel votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, noes 0. The reading of the titles is waived. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I now move that those Senate joint resolutions go by for the day.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate joint resolutions on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolutions will go by for the day.
Regular calendar, Senate resolution on first reading. Senate Resolution 91, expressing the censure of the Senate.
Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I inquire of the clerk, does that complete the calendar for today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D-Steph, rise?
Mr. President, I rise for point of personal privilege.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, first, I'd like to thank Dr. Kerry and Dr. Avila for briefing us this morning and answering our questions regarding the COVID vaccinations. I truly wish we could have had more time for these discussions, questions, and answers, and really understand the plan for moving forward with COVID vaccines. What we learned today was that Michigan, Ohio, Georgia, Illinois have all received about the same amount of doses that we have, and all have administered them and a lot more efficiently than we have. We also learned that since we've been in session, we've gone from number 38 to number 42 to number 48. Today, we've now learned that Virginia is number 50, dead last. As I stated prior, I'll cite my sources. This information comes from Becker's Healthcare, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a go-to source for healthcare decision makers and one of the fastest growing media platforms in the industry. I'd also like to cite the New York Times, the CDC, and one of my colleagues has recently pointed out a site called Blue Virginia. All have Virginia as last on the percentage of COVID-19 vaccinations administered of those who've been distributed, dead last. I can't speak for anyone in this chamber, however, I very much believe that having the only doctor as a governor, I wish we were first. And Mr. President, I believe we should be first. We all know that we have the infrastructure and processes in place. We can inoculate the entire population in Virginia in less than a week. So I can't quite figure out why Virginia's dead last. In a letter to the editor published today in the Virginia Pilot, Dr. Paul Ryan of Williamsburg wrote, "I've been practicing medicine on the peninsula since 1986, and I've never been so ashamed of our health department locally and statewide because of the inability to have a rollout of COVID-19 vaccine." The Pilot editorial board themselves wrote, "The administration must do a better job in a number of areas, and its successes will be measured by the results, not promises." I agree with Dr. Ryan, and I agree with the Virginia Pilot editorial board. I'll repeat, since I've never said this before and it's never come out of my lips, I agree with the Virginia Pilot editorial board. The Surgeon General has stated that for states that don't get vaccines into the arms of citizens, we'll reallocate those doses to states that will. Is this why other states are receiving the doses instead of Virginia? Is it because they're getting more doses into the arms of citizens? Is this going to help us attract businesses in the future for Virginia? Are responses like this going to bring us back to the best place to do business in? I don't think so. I know we can do better, Mr. President. We know we can do better. We should be the #1 state for administering the vaccines, not number 50. We need results, not excuses. Thank you.
Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Monday, January 25th, the Committee on Commerce and Labor will meet 15 minutes after adjournment, West Committee Room. The Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Health and Human Resources will meet at 4 p.m. in the East Committee Room. Senators Howe, Hanger, Vogel, Barker, Deeds, Eben, and McClellan. The Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources Subcommittee on Companion Animals will meet at 4 p.m. in the chamber at the Science Museum. Senators Marsden, Favola, and Pillion. Tuesday, January 26, 2026, the Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Economic Development and Natural Resources will meet at 7:30 a.m. West Committee Room. Senators Marsden, Ruff, Howe, Saslaw, Hanger, and Barker. The Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on General Government will meet at 7:30 a.m. in the chamber. Senators Peterson, Newman, Lucas, Vogel, Locke, and Eben. The Committee on Finance and Appropriations will meet at 9 a.m. West Committee Room. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. Democratic Caucus Room. The Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. in the Republican Caucus Room.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Do any senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, I call on the senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.